And here's where I want to lean in a little bit on where we find ourselves. If you'll study the civil rights movement in the 60s, there's a pattern that emerges. So the predominant leader there is Martin Luther King Jr., which we really like right now because he's dead. I have to believe that a Martin Luther King Jr. right now, he'd be a liberal Marxist socialist that everybody despises. But we'll quote him now because he's not here to offend us in the now. This is what Jesus means when he says that you love the prophets that are no longer with us, but you don't like the prophets that are here today, but neither here nor there. In the 60s, the civil rights movement was born out of the church. And so if you study Martin Luther King, like there was this pattern. They would meet, they would pray, they would worship, they would go over kind of the rules of the protest, and then they would march. And this was a rhythm that was established by King so that it was rooted in the church, that the church let out in a very real way on the civil rights movement in the 60s. And now one of the things that has happened is the church by and large has refused to participate, which means that we have turned over, God help us, we have turned over what is our inheritance to dark ideologies. Like when you say, hey, we're not going to get involved, let's just preach the gospel to that, which, by the way, I find so hypocritical. You don't just preach the gospel of sex trafficking. You don't just preach the gospel on the issue of life and abortion. No, you act. And so it's why it's like this brain-broke disjoint that's got us acting absurd and then critiquing this movement as being evil and dark when we have given up our inheritance. You cannot point out all the flaws in this current movement while you have abandoned the place that we were meant to play. You cannot point out all the, well, this means this, and this believes this, and that's this, and ignore the sorrow and lament of 12 to 13 million image bearers in our country.